So wait and welcome to the second video on the verse literature of Aeneid Book 6. There's been about 70 lines between section 1 and section 2. Aeneas meets a dead shipmate of his, not particularly important to our actual section. So, ergo, therefore, they paragunt with the eater. They carried on with the journey. Worth noting that paragunt and then shortly afterwards propinquant and quite a lot of other verbs will be historic present. That is to say that they look present, but they act perfect, because obviously he's describing something in the past. It's just a way for Virgil to sort of add a bit of vivid action. So, worth noting. They carried on with the journey in captum begun, or they had begun, and they propinquant the fluvio, and they approached the river. Fluvius is just a different word for river. Jam inde, now from there, the Narwita, the boatman, ut, as he prospected, perceived quos them, from the Stygia under, from the Stygian water, ere, literally to go. Obviously, this is an indirect statement. Per tacitum nemus, through the silent grove, and advertere, to turn, their pedem, their foot, literally, but their footsteps, to the ripae, to the bank. Prior, first, he adgreditor, he attacked them with they attacked them sic thus, with dictis, with words, and he ultro, moreover, increpat, rebuked them. That is to say, as Chiron is sitting in his boat, he sees Aeneas in the stable coming up to them, and he starts just shouting at them, as we're going to see. So, who is this guy Aeneas? Well, Aeneas is the son of Venus, or Aphrodite, the goddess of love, and Anchises, the king of a small kingdom near Troy. He will come up in the next sections. He was also the son-in-law of King Priam of Troy. He married Priam's daughter Creusa as his first wife. She died, and that account is given in Book 2. Aeneas was a fairly big-scale warrior. He was one of the best defenders of Troy and was supposedly super pious and dutiful to the gods. Now, I keep saying that word supposedly super pious because it's kind of debatable. The Romans were pretty down with Aeneas. They thought he was a pretty good character, but there's at least some evidence to say that he is problematic as a hero, particularly for modern audiences. Regardless, he was the leader of a large faction of the Trojans that managed to successfully flee the city, and they are fleeing to Italy. There, his descendants, Romulus and Remus, will eventually found Rome and the Julian family, i.e. the family of Julius Caesar and Augustus, the first emperor, under whose rule this book is being written, so you can see why Aeneas was the character. So in Book 6, he is travelling down into the underworld to ask his father Anchises for advice. So continue. These are Chiron's rebuking words to them. Quisquis, whoever as you are, you who qui armatus, armed, tendi strive, ad nostra flumina, to my river, or possibly my rivers, depends on whether he's talking about the one that he sails on, or all the rivers of the underworld. Fare, tell me. Age is technically the imperative of ago, so it means do, act, or drive, but here we're using it colloquially, just mean like then or well. So tell me, age then, quid venias, why have you come? Istink, from where, yam, now you are. And comprime, and halt your gressum, your steps, plural. Hicus locus, this is the place of umbrarum, of shadows, or obviously could mean ghosts, and both would apply. Of somni, of sleep, of soprae noctisque, and of drowsy night. It is nefas, it is forbidden. Nefas, really evocative word, not just bad, but like unspeakable. It is unspeakable, it is forbidden to vectare, to carry viva corpora, living bodies, on my Stygia carina, on my Stygian boat, another word for boat. Virgil likes to vary them through. So quite aggressive words from Chiron. Who are you? Why are you here? You're not meant to be here. And he continues with why he doesn't want to take them. Vero, truly, sum laetatus nec, it didn't please me to acipese, to have taken Alcides, an alternative word for Hercules, euntum lacu, travelling over the lake. We get told by Servius that Charon was chained up for a year for letting Hercules in, despite the fact that, as I'm going to say later, he gets let in as part of his labours, and Charon didn't really have a choice in the matter. So it makes sense that Charon didn't really enjoy letting Hercules in. Nec Thesia nor Pirithous, nor Theseus and Pirithous, quamquam, although essent they were geneti dis, born from the gods, or children of the gods, and invicti viribus, and unbeaten in strength. It's actually worth noting that Aeneas is, of course, a child of Venus, child of the gods, and about 30 lines earlier, he gets described as invictus. So he's actually naming like 2 of the reasons why Aeneas could be allowed in, and he's saying, I don't care about those reasons, I still didn't like it. He's complaining, quite rightfully to be fair. So Hercules goes into Hades in order to bring back Cerberus. He gets a couple of gods to guide him, and he asks Hades for permission, so it seems a bit harsh that Charon gets punished for it. Theseus and Pirithous also descend into Hades, but for much more dumb reasons. They decide, after their wives died, to get new wives, okay? Theseus manages to briefly kidnap Helen of Sparta, who was 13 at the time, ew, where Pirithous decides that he wants to kidnap Persephone, the daughter of 2 gods, the wife of another god, and also a god herself. This was a bad plan. They get into Hades, and then they immediately get trapped there because Hades has very little chill. Pirithous does not ever come out of Hades. He just stays there for eternity. Others of note, Orpheus manages to get in Hades and out of Hades, but not with his wife Eurydice. Alcestis gets rescued. Sisyphus briefly escapes death. Odysseus and Aeneas do the same thing of going in to talk to someone and then coming out, and maybe some others, but it's not a very common thing. So now Charon's going to explain to you what I just told you. Ille, the former, petty wit, sought Tartareum custodem, Tartarus's guard, in Winkler, in chains manu, by hand. So we have to add in a word like to place. And he traxit him trementem, dragged him trembling, as solio regis, from the throne of the king Ipsius himself. He, the latter, adorti, invaded to deducere the dominam, the mistress, from Dis's thalamo. Dis is just another word for Hades. Charon doesn't really seem very happy with Cerberus. He seems to be putting a bit of shade on the poor doggy. So Charon has given his list of reasons as to why they shouldn't be here and why he doesn't want to take them, contra quae, against which the prophetess, the Vates, of Amphrysian Apollo, this is a particularly dumb epithet for Apollo, whatever, fata est, she spoke, brevit her, briefly, there is nullae tales, no such insidiae, trap, hic, here, absiste movere, cease to be disturbed, stop worrying. Nec tutela ferent, nor do our tela weapons ferent whim bring violence. Your ingens janitor, your huge, literally doorman, I've translated as guard dog, latrans, barking eternally from his antro, from his cave. Licet is permitted to terreat, to terrify the exsangues umbras, the bloodless shades or ghosts. Casta Proserpina, chaste Proserpina, licet servet, is permitted to watch over the limen for her patrui, her husband's threshold. Quite sarcastic here by the Sibyl. Yeah, sure, your dog can keep barking in his cave and terrify bloodless ghosts who obviously aren't very brave. And sure, your mistress can watch over her uncle's bedroom. Hmm. So, who is this lady who is casting shade upon a minor god that Chiron is? She's basically the Italian version of the Delphic oracle. She's a priestess of Apollo who lives near Cumae, which is near Naples. This is her cave. Comes up in a couple of myths to do with Rome. Like other oracles, she was supposedly a virgin who got possessed unpleasantly by Apollo, who spoke oracles through her. The description in Aeneid Book 3, another translation by A.S. Klein, um, describes her as the raving prophetess. And she writes her prophecies and she just sort of puts them up, but as soon as the breeze comes, they all get scattered. So Aeneas gets her to speak to him. Ovid's Metamorphoses comes into a little bit more backstory and says how she gets eternal life from Apollo, um, but not eternal youth, so she slowly withers away. So the Sibyl continues. Troias Aeneas, Trojan Aeneas, insignis, renowned in pietate et armis, in piety and arms, going to talk about that word, very important, descended, descends, ad umbras to the shadows, but the immas, the deepest shadows of Erebus, another word for Hades, ad genitorem to his father. Si imago, if the image of tantae pietatis, of such great piety, nulla movet, doesn't move you, te, you, at agnoskes, but you must recognize hunc ramum, this branch. And then aperit, she reveals the ramum, the branch, quae laetibat, which she was hiding in her vestae, in her clothing. Tum corda, then his heart, tumida, swollen, ex ira, from anger, residunt, subsided, sat back. So the Sibyl's got, as it happens, a get into jail free card. She's got this golden branch, which we're going to talk about. She can get in. She's got the magic pass. But in the meantime, she's basically just testing Charon. Hey, will you let us in? And when he's no and gives some reasons, she just mocks him to his face and starts mocking other gods of the underworld like Cerberus and Hades. So quite a bold move by a sort of mortal lady. Image of such great piety. Pietas is a really, really important word. Technically translates to something like duty, but means duty to the gods, to the state, to the family, everything. It is supposedly Aeneas's big virtue, and one of the chief virtues of Romans in general. It stands in contrast to furor, madness, or passion. So characters who act according to what their emotions make them feel, as opposed to acting as to logic and reason. When Augustus Caesar, i.e. the first emperor, gets given by the Senate a commemorative golden shield of virtues, pietas is one of the four that he gets, the others being courage, clemency, and justice. Nec plura his, no more than these, than this. So really, really short phrase. They have this argument back and forth about whether they're going to be allowed in. Sybil pulls out the branch. Okay, cool, in you get. Ille, that man or that boatman. Admirans, admiring the venerabile, the venerable, the worthy of veneration. Donum, gift of fatalis virgae, of fated branch. Visum, seen, post longo tempore, after a long time. Advertit, turned towards the caeruleam pupem, the murky stern, i.e. of the boat. Caeruleum kind of means like color of the sky, but often at night, has a load of different translations. I've gone for murky here. And he propinquat the ripae, and approached the bank. So Sybil pulls out the branch, they immediately get in. This branch isn't really a thing in other mythology, but whatever. We continue straight on. Inde, from there he deturbat the alias, he cast down the other animas souls, quae sedevant, who were sitting, per longa juga, across its long beams or yokes, and laxat, opened, obviously we get the word laxative from that, the foros, the gangways. Simul, at the same time as he accepit, welcomed, ingentem Aeneam, huge Aeneas on Alveo on board. Aeneas is huge because all Greek demigods are quite literally larger than life. The Setulis Kimber, the patched craft Kimber, Gemwood, groaned, and accepit and let in multam paludem by the Remosa, lots of swamp water, because they're in a swamp, by its cracks, literally crack singular, but this is a patched craft. It's not exactly new or anything. It's got lots of holes, things just patching over it, and so it lets lots of water in when a heavy weight gets in. And finally, last section, I know this has been a long one. Tandem, at last he exponit the Vatem, the prophetess, and the Virum, the hero. It's both and because it's quae and quae. In columnas, safe, transfluvius, across the river, on the informi unstable limo mud, in the ulva, in the swamp glass, in the glauca ulva, in the pale swamp grass. A nice image here from 2010 Clash of the Titans. Big ship. He's got to transport a lot of souls, and also it's all patched and rickety. But Aeneas alone makes the whole thing sink down. And there you have it, the entirety of section 2. Obviously, the verse sections are a little bit longer, but though they're coherent thematic chunks. Theme here, obviously, the setting of the underworld and persuading Chiron to let them come across. We would be looking to analyze the descriptive writing, as you would expect. Hope that helps. Thank you very much.